I am 70 years old and I am not ashamed of it. Miriam Pemberton, widow, retiree, former archivist for the Baltimore City Council. I live alone in the house I inherited from my mother-in-law 47 years ago. Much has changed during that time. Neighbors, cars on the street, prices in stores. The only thing that hasn't changed is my habit of keeping things tidy. Right now, I was stacking newspapers in a pile, aligning the edges to the millimeter. 40 years of working in an archive have left their mark. Every document must be in its place, every sheet neatly filed. Frank used to laugh at this quirk of mine, calling me a human ruler. Now that he's been gone for 5 years, there's no one to laugh at my pedantry. I wouldn't say I feel old. My hands are steady, my legs carry me well, and my mind is sharp. I meet other women my age in stores, hunched over, complaining about their health. Maybe I'm lucky with my genes, or maybe it's my lifestyle. I've never smoked, rarely drank, and have always followed a healthy routine. Outside the kitchen window, I could see the McDonald's yard. Esther was hanging up laundry, each towel at the same distance from the next, the sheets stretched out without a single wrinkle. At 73, she had retained the habits of a school teacher. I liked it. It was nice to see that not everything in the world was striving for chaos. The clock on the kitchen wall showed 7 o'clock sharp. I get up at this time every day, regardless of my plans. 38 years of service in the city archives have developed a routine that I don't deviate from even in retirement. Order in time is as important as order in things. I put the kettle on and took my favorite cup out of the cupboard, white with a blue rim. Frank and I bought it on our 15th wedding anniversary. Back then, it seemed like there would be many more anniversaries to come. 37 have passed. That's not so few, but you always want more. My husband died of a heart attack at the age of 68. He worked as a mechanic at the Bethlehem steel plant and never complained about his health. He passed away unexpectedly. He was watching TV in the evening and didn't wake up in the morning. The doctors said his heart just stopped. It was a good death for a man of his profession. I was left alone in this house. Delphine suggested selling it and moving closer to her, but I refused. I spent my entire adult life here. My daughter was born and raised here. Changing my familiar surroundings at 70 seems pointless. While the tea was brewing, I watered the flowers on the windowsill. The geraniums have been blooming for 2 months in a row, a rarity for October. Frank said I had a green thumb. Maybe it's just that I don't forget to water them. Consistency is an underrated quality. I sat down at the table facing the window. From here, I can see half of our street, the Chen's house with its neat garden, the young Grayson's house with a playground in the yard, and old Mr. Coleman's house, who never rakes his leaves. People are different. Habits are different. But we've been living next door to each other for 20 years. I unfold the morning paper, the local Baltimore paper. I read the national news online, but I prefer the local news in print. An old archivist's habit. Besides, the font is larger, which is important at my age. I don't wear glasses yet. Pride won't allow it. Working in the archives was my life's work. I started there when I was 32, when Delphine was 8. Before that, I stayed at home and raised my child. Frank earned enough to support the family, but I wanted to do something on my own. The City Hall archives aren't the most prestigious place, but they're suitable for a woman with a child. The schedule is stable, there are no business trips, and the staff is decent. The salary was modest, but I could combine work with my maternal duties. I read the newspaper slowly, pondering each article. I had plenty of time. The day was long and I had few plans. The main event was the family dinner. Delphine would arrive with her husband and children at 6 in the evening. They visit once a month to fulfill their filial duty. Maybe I'm being unfair. Delphina works and has her own worries. She's an office manager at a dental clinic, a stressful job with capricious patients and demanding doctors. But sometimes it seems that these visits weigh on her more than they make her happy. Especially in recent years, she's always in a hurry, preoccupied with something important. My grandchildren, Quincy and Vera, are good kids. The boy is 16, the girl is 14. They are well-mannered, attend a private school, and have no serious problems. But I rarely see them, only during these monthly dinners. They used to come more often and ask to stay for the weekend. Now they have their own lives and friends. I finish my tea and go upstairs to get changed. Everything in the bedroom is in its place. The bed is made military style, and my clothes are neatly folded. On the dresser are photographs in frames of various sizes. Our wedding with Frank, Delphine's birth, family holidays, the history of our family in faces and dates. Frank isn't in the most recent photos. Digital cameras appeared after his death. It's strange to think that modern technology passed him by. He loved new things and was the first in the neighborhood to buy a VCR, then a computer. I wonder what he would say about smartphones. I take a shower and get dressed slowly. A gray skirt, a white blouse, a dark blue cardigan. Nothing bright. At my age, it looks ridiculous. I comb my hair and lightly touch up my lips. Not for beauty, but for order. My appearance should match my inner state. I have a simple breakfast, toast with butter and orange juice. It makes no sense to cook complicated meals for one person. When Frank was alive, the kitchen was filled with the smell of bacon and fresh coffee. He loved hearty breakfasts and said that you should start the day with a full stomach. Now I eat little and simply. Delphine thinks this is unhealthy and advises me to buy vitamins. But at 70, the body knows what it needs. If I want an apple, I eat an apple. If I want bread, I eat bread. After breakfast, I wash my dishes. 2 plates, a cup, a knife. It only takes a minute, but I do it thoroughly. In the archive, a lot depended on small details, too. An incorrectly filed document could be lost for years, and an inaccurate date could turn a search into a detective story. I go to the living room and sit down in my favorite armchair by the window. It's quiet and cozy here. There are bookshelves up to the ceiling, an old carpet with an oriental pattern, and dark wood furniture. Everything was bought in the 70s, when things were made to last. Delphine regularly hints at the need for an update. The carpet is worn out, the curtains are faded, the furniture takes up too much space. Maybe she's right, but I don't want to change anything. These things remember our life with Frank. There was also old furniture in the archive. Metal cabinets from the 1950s, wooden tables with lots of drawers. The director suggested updating the equipment, but we resisted. Why change something that works fine? Documents had been lying around for decades, each in its own folder. The slightest disruption to the system turned searching into a nightmare. I knew the layout of the shelves by heart and could find any document with my eyes closed. People came with all kinds of requests. Young couples were looking for marriage certificates, elderly people for pension documents. Some were restoring lost certificates. Others were digging into their family history. Every document was part of someone's life. I go out to check the mail. In the mailbox are utility bills and advertising brochures. Esther waves from the garden where she is tying up roses. "Good morning, Miriam. How are you?" "Everything's fine. How about you?" "Getting ready for winter, the roses need to be covered." Esther knows a lot about gardening. Her garden looks like a picture. Every plant in its place, not a weed in sight. I don't have that kind of patience. I go back into the house and start planning dinner. I'll make chicken with rosemary, Frank's recipe. He served in the army, traveled to Europe, and brought back some culinary ideas. I take out the meat and start preparing it. I trim the fat, rub it with spices, and make incisions. My hands remember the movements. 40 years of cooking don't go by without a trace. While the chicken is marinating, I tidy up the house. I vacuum the carpets and dust. I want everything to be perfect before the guests arrive. At noon, I take a break. Tea and cookies, sunny weather outside. A good day for a family dinner. After lunch, I read a detective novel from the library. I love the clear logic of the genre. Crime, investigation, exposure. Everything is clear, unlike in real life. By 4 o'clock, I prepare the side dishes. Potatoes, carrots, onions, simple vegetables. I cut them neatly into equal pieces. At 5, I put the chicken in the oven. It will be ready in an hour. I set the table and take out the nice plates, the wedding set for special occasions. I have time to change and put on a little makeup. I want to look presentable. At 5:30, I hear the car. They're here. Delphine is driving, Norris is next to her, and the kids are in the back with their phones. I go out to meet the only family I have. Delphine gets out of the car first, fixing her hair and looking around my house with a critical eye. At 45, she looks younger than her age. Regular trips to the gym and beauty salons have paid off. She is impeccably dressed, as always. A dark blue suit, low-heeled shoes, and a matching handbag. An office manager at a dental clinic has to look successful. "Hi, Mom." She kissed me on the cheek, barely touching my skin with her lips. "How are you? You look good." "Thanks. Everything's fine." "I see the paint on the window frames is peeling," she added before I could answer. "We should touch it up before winter or the wood will rot." Norris walked slowly around the car, checking that the doors were locked. My brother-in-law had always been a cautious man. 47 years of life had taught him not to rush to conclusions and to double-check important things. Working as a storekeeper in a building supplies store required attention to detail, and that habit carried over into everything else. "Good evening, Miriam." He nodded to me with the polite aloofness he had maintained even after 20 years of acquaintance. "Thanks for inviting me. It smells wonderful." "Chicken with rosemary. Remember, Norris, you always ask for seconds." "Of course I do. Frank taught you a great recipe." Delphine grimaced at the mention of her father. She didn't like it when the conversation turned to Frank, perhaps because his death reminded her of her own mortality, or perhaps simply because the past seemed less important to her than plans for the future. Quincy and Vera got out of the car reluctantly, their eyes glued to their phone screens. 16-year-old Quincy was tall for his age, but he moved uncertainly, as if he wasn't used to his own height yet. 14-year-old Vera, on the other hand, seemed older, a serious face, attentive eyes, a habit of listening more than talking. "Hi, Grandma." Quincy finally looked up from his phone. "How are you?" "Not bad." "How's school?" "Fine. I have tests coming up, so I'm studying." "What subjects?" "Math, physics, chemistry. Mom says they're the most important for getting into college." Vera came over and hugged me around the waist, the only one in the family who did so sincerely. "It smells really good," she said. "Did you make chicken with rosemary?" "Yes. Do you remember the recipe?" "Of course. Grandpa taught you and you told me last time." "Vera, don't ask so many questions," Delphine scolded her daughter. "Grandma is tired. She needs to rest, not entertain the children with stories." "It's no trouble," I objected. "I love telling my grandchildren about their grandfather." "Come on in," I said. "Dinner's almost ready." We entered the hallway, and the familiar routine began. Delphine took off her shoes and placed them neatly against the wall, glancing around the room. Norris hung his jacket on a coat rack, and the children threw their backpacks by the door. Everyone knew their place in this house, even though they didn't visit very often. "Mom, have you thought about replacing this rug?" Delphine pointed to the doormat. "It's completely worn out, and the color is so dull. Bright, cheerful colors are in style now." "Your grandmother gave us this rug when we moved in," I replied. "I like it. But you could buy something more modern." I saw some nice ones in the store, and they weren't expensive. They're practical and easy to wash. This one is practical too. It's been here for 40 years and still works fine. Norris coughed and quickly went into the living room, taking the children with him. He had long since learned to avoid such conversations between his wife and mother-in-law. A wise man knows when to back off. In the living room, Delphine continued her inspection with the air of an interior design expert. "This sofa is already creaking," she remarked, sitting down and bouncing slightly to check the springs. "And the upholstery is worn at the edges. Maybe it's time to replace the furniture?" "The furniture is sturdy," I said. "It'll last a long time. But the interior should be in keeping with the times. Light colors, minimalism, and functionality are in style now. Everything here is so heavy and dark, it's like a museum." "Museum isn't an insult," I remarked. "Museums preserve valuable things. Valuable to history, but not to life. You're not going to turn the house into a mausoleum, are you?" Quincy sat down in the armchair by the window and took out his phone again, but I noticed him glancing at his mother. Apparently, he was familiar with these conversations about change. Vera sat down on the floor by the coffee table, looking at the framed family photos. "Grandma, who's this?" She pointed to a black and white photograph. "These are my parents, your great-grandfather and great-grandmother." "Why are they so serious? They're not smiling at all." Back then, it wasn't customary to smile for photos. Photographs were considered official documents, almost like passports. "That's strange." I couldn't help but smile. "You have a cheerful disposition, just like Grandpa Frank. He always laughed when we took pictures." Delphine walked over to the bookshelves and ran her finger along the spines, leaving a trail of dust. Mom, when was the last time you read all these books? Half of them are probably outdated, and they're collecting dust. Books don't become outdated, I replied. Only people who stop reading them become outdated. But why keep something you don't use? You could donate them to a library or charity. Make room for something useful, something modern. Like what? Well, for flowers, or for new technology. A big TV, for example. Yours is so small, probably from the 90s. It's enough for me. I don't watch much TV. You should. There are so many interesting programs and documentaries these days. It's both educational and entertaining. Norris got up from the sofa and went to the window, pretending to look at something outside. I saw his shoulders tense up. He didn't like it when his wife criticized other people's habits, but he didn't dare to argue. In 20 years of marriage, he had learned to pick his battles. "Mom, can I help set the table?" Vera asked. "Of course, dear." We went into the dining room, where I had already set out the plates and cutlery. Vera neatly laid out the napkins and straightened the glasses. Her movements were precise, which was rare for a teenager. "Grandma, why does Mom always make comments about the house?" she asked quietly, smoothing out a napkin. "It's beautiful." "She probably wants to help," I replied diplomatically. "But it's your home. You can decorate it however you want." "Of course I can." But grown-up children often think they know better than their parents what they need. Vera nodded seriously, as if memorizing this information for the future. Delphine glanced into the dining room and looked at the table setting. "Why are we eating here? It's more comfortable in the kitchen, and there's less washing up. And the atmosphere is simpler, more democratic." "Family dinners should be in the dining room," I said. "That's how it's always been in our family." But times have changed. Nowadays, people value practicality more than tradition. Why make things more complicated for yourself? Not all changes are for the better. Not all traditions make sense in the modern world. I went to the kitchen to check on the chicken. It was ready. Golden, fragrant, just like Frank used to make it. I took the baking sheet out of the oven and put it on the stove to cool. Norris appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Can I help with anything?" "Thanks, almost everything's ready. How's work?" "Fine. We have a new boss, a young guy. He's trying to modernize everything. How is that affecting your work?" "It's hard to say yet. He says all the right things about efficiency and optimization, but in practice, he creates more confusion than order. He makes us file reports in triplicate. Young people often do that. They think that change automatically means improvement. Yes, and that experience is a relic of the past. But a warehouse isn't an office. Reliability is important here, not novelty." Norris nodded but said nothing more. He was a man of few words, especially when it came to criticizing his boss or his wife. We returned to the dining room, where the others were already sitting down at the table. Delphine sat at the head, even though that was my place. It was an old habit. She always liked to be in charge, even in someone else's house. "Mom, maybe next time we should order food from a restaurant," she suggested, unfolding her napkin. "Why bother at your age?" "I like to cook," I replied, cutting the chicken, "especially for the family. But it's exhausting. You have to buy the ingredients, stand at the stove, and then wash the dishes. Ready-made meals are very good these days, almost like home cooking. Almost doesn't mean exactly the same, but it saves time and energy. Time is the most valuable resource." Quincy looked up from his plate. "I like the way Grandma cooks. It's much tastier than in restaurants." "You're just used to it," said Delphine. "Modern cuisine is much more varied and healthier. They watch the calories and make sure you get a balance of vitamins." "I don't need a balance of vitamins," objected Quincy. "I need it to taste good." Tasty and healthy should go together. You can't eat just anything because you like it. Delphine gave her son a disapproving look, but he didn't back down. "Why not? Grandma has been cooking like this her whole life, and she looks great." "Grandma was lucky with her genes, but that doesn't mean you can't watch what you eat." "Mom, you don't watch what you eat either," Vera interjected unexpectedly. "Yesterday, you ate ice cream straight out of the box." "That's completely different," Delphine said, embarrassed. "Adults can have exceptions." Silence reigned at the table. Everyone ate, occasionally exchanging meaningless phrases about the weather and work. Norris methodically cut the meat into equal pieces, while Quincy ate quickly, clearly thinking about something else. Vera watched the adults closely, as if studying their behavior for future use. "How's school?" I asked my grandchildren. "Fine," replied Quincy. "Exams are coming up, so there's a lot to study." "Which subjects are the hardest?" "Math and physics, but I'm doing okay." "How about you, Vera?" "Not bad either. I like history and literature, especially when we study different eras." "Those are liberal arts," Delphine interjected. "The exact sciences are more important now. They offer better career prospects." "But it's important to do what you like," I said. "It's good to like something, but you have to think about practical applications. Philologists and historians earn much less than engineers and programmers. That's a fact." Vera lowered her eyes to her plate. Apparently, this conversation was nothing new to her. "In my day, people chose a profession based on their calling," I remarked. "In your day, you could afford such a luxury," replied Delphine. "Nowadays, life is more expensive and competition is fiercer. You have to be more pragmatic." "Perhaps, but happiness is worth something too." "Happiness is a relative concept. Money is very concrete. You can't buy an apartment or send your children to college with happiness." Norris coughed again and asked for the salt, a classic way to change the subject. After the main course, I served dessert, apple pie, which I had baked that morning. Delphine declined, citing her diet. Norris and the children each had a piece and praised the taste. "It's my great-grandmother's recipe," I told Vera. "Would you like me to teach you?" "Yes, of course. Why does she need to learn to bake?" asked Delphine. "You can buy excellent cakes and pastries in stores these days. They're professional quality." "Homemade baking is completely different," Vera objected. "And anyway, it's interesting to know how to cook." "Interesting, but impractical." "It's better to spend your time learning languages or computer programs. That will come in handy in life." Vera said nothing, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. Dinner was coming to an end. Delphina glanced at her watch several times, a sure sign that she was in a hurry to get home. She always had more important things to do than spend time with her family. "Mom, have you ever thought about making your life easier?" she asked as I began to clear the plates. "Like hiring a housekeeper?" "Why? I can manage on my own." "Now you can. But it will get harder as you get older. It's better to think about it in advance." "I'll think about it when it gets harder. But it's smarter to plan ahead. It's not easy to find a good helper. You need recommendations and references." I said nothing and continued clearing the table. Delphine always loved planning other people's lives, especially mine. And for some reason, these plans always implied that I was incapable of taking care of myself. After dessert, we moved to the living room. Delphine settled into an armchair by the window and took a bottle of red wine with an expensive label out of her handbag. I noticed the French name and the gold medal on the neck. My daughter never skimped on anything that could make an impression. "Mom, can I? Norris bought some good wine and we never opened it at home. It would be a shame to let it go to waste." I nodded, even though I knew that alcohol made my daughter even more opinionated than usual. Wine loosened her tongue and made her more confident in her own judgments. Perhaps that was why she had brought it, to make it easier to talk about what she had been planning to discuss for a long time. Delphine had always had a tendency to be theatrical, especially when it came to important conversations. She poured herself a glass of dark red wine and offered the others some, but Norris shook his head. He was driving, and the children were too young for alcohol. However, Delphine wasn't counting on company. She just needed to relax before an important conversation. I saw her take a few deep breaths, like an actress before going on stage. "It's so nice to sit here," Delphine said, taking a sip and closing her eyes. "Quiet, peaceful. Not like at home. There's always someone making noise, music playing, the phone ringing, neighbors drilling. A real vacation home." "That's because we live there," Vera said quietly, but her mother ignored her as if she hadn't heard. "Mom, have you thought about moving to a smaller apartment?" Delphina glanced around the living room as if assessing its size and market value. "The house is big and you're all alone. It must be hard to take care of everything. And heating must cost a fortune in winter, especially with ceilings like that." "I manage," I replied curtly, "but it'll only get harder with age. And besides, the house needs serious repairs. See, the paint is peeling off the windows and the floorboards creak when you walk. The roof will probably start leaking soon, too. There's been a lot of rain this year. That's a lot of money to fix, thousands of dollars. Norris coughed awkwardly and moved to the other end of the sofa as if trying to distance himself from the conversation. He picked up a magazine from the coffee table and began leafing through it. Although I could see he wasn't reading, he was just pretending to be busy. Quincy stared at the floor, studying the pattern on the carpet, while Vera frowned and glanced at her mother with obvious disapproval. "Delphi, maybe we shouldn't," Norris began, looking up from the magazine, but his wife waved him off. "Why not? We're a family. We can discuss family matters openly. There's no need to make it taboo." She finished her wine and poured herself another glass, ignoring her husband's reproachful glance. "Mom, I'm serious. You could sell the house and buy a nice apartment in a good neighborhood, modern, with an elevator, a concierge, security. You'd even have enough money left over for a comfortable retirement. This house is mine," I said slowly. "This is where I've spent my life. I understand that you have memories, of course, but you can't live only in the past. You need to think about the future. Make realistic plans for the years you have left. Be practical." "What future are you talking about?" Delphine put her glass on the coffee table and leaned forward. Her eyes took on that excited gleam I remembered well from childhood. That was how she looked when she was planning her next adventure or trying to get her parents to buy her something expensive. Back then, it seemed like cute, childish trickery. Now it looked completely different. "I'm talking about the children's future," she said, lowering her voice to a confidential tone. "Quincy is about to go to college and Vera will be there in a few years. Education costs a fortune these days. Good universities require not only excellent grades, but also serious financial investment, sometimes up to $100,000 for 4 years. Mom," Quincy tried to stop her, but Delphine didn't pay any attention. "And they should have an inheritance, something stable and reliable. Not money in a bank account that can lose its value due to inflation, but real estate. A house in a good neighborhood will always be expensive." She took her glass back and took a big sip. "That's why I think you should transfer the house to your grandchildren. There's still time to get everything sorted out properly without unnecessary taxes and red tape." There was a silence that seemed to last forever. Even the clock on the mantelpiece seemed to stop ticking. Norris turned pale and stared at his hands clenched into fists. Quincy slowly raised his head and looked first at his mother, then at me with an expression of confusion and shame. Vera opened her mouth but said nothing, only her eyes widened in surprise. A car drove by outside, and the headlights lit up the living room for a second. Then it was dark again. I felt my throat go dry. "What?" I asked, even though I had heard every word. "Well, think about it," Delphina said quickly, as if afraid of being interrupted. "It's a big house, worth a decent amount. Probably $300,000, maybe more if the real estate market keeps growing. If we transfer it to Quincy and Vera, they'll have a nice safety net for the future. And you can live here for the rest of your days. We're not kicking you out. They'll just be the legal owners. How generous of you." I felt something inside me grow cold and tight. "Mom, don't be sarcastic. I'm serious. It's sensible to secure your children's future in advance, rather than wait until—" She faltered, not daring to finish. "Until I die. Is that what you mean?" "Don't be so harsh. But sooner or later it happens to all of us. And it's better to prepare for that moment in advance than to deal with inheritance, courts, and taxes later. It saves everyone nerves and money. What if I don't want to?" Delphine put down her glass and sat up straight in her chair. The wine had made her cheeks rosy, but her gaze remained cold and calculating, like that of an experienced merchant who knows the price of her goods and is ready to bargain to the last. She took a deep breath, as if gathering her courage. "Then I'm afraid you'll have to rethink your priorities," she said, her voice sounding steely. "Think about what's really important in life." "And what do you think is important?" "Family, children, their future." Delphine paused, as if weighing her words, twirled the glass in her hands, then added more quietly, "If you want to see your grandchildren, sign the house over to them." Norris flinched as if he had been slapped and dropped the magazine on the floor. Quincy jumped up from the sofa, knocking over a vase of nuts that scattered across the carpet with a dry thud. "Mom, what are you talking about?" His voice trembled with indignation. "This is blackmail." "Sit down," Delphine snapped, without turning her head toward him. "This is a conversation between adults, and the children have nothing to do with it." "But you're talking about us," Vera interrupted, her voice trembling with excitement. "And it's not right. We didn't ask you to bargain with us." "Both of you, be quiet." Delphine raised her voice, and the children obediently sat back down. But I could see them looking at each other, full of confusion and shame for their mother. "Mom, I'm not trying to force you into anything. I'm just explaining how things work in the real world." "Explaining?" I stood up and walked over to the window. Outside, the October evening was dark, and the streetlights illuminated the bare branches of the oak trees Frank had planted many years ago. Almost all the leaves had fallen, lying on the ground like a brown carpet. "You're threatening me, Delphine." "No one is threatening you. I just want you to think about the children, about their future, and not cling to the past." "About the children or about myself? About my plans and ambitions?" "Mom!" Delphine also stood up, swayed, and grabbed the back of the chair. "How can you say that? I only think about them." "You're thinking about how to get my house. That's what you're thinking." "That's not true. I want to give them a stable future." "Then why can't you wait until I die like decent people do? Why do you have to bargain right now?" Norris groaned, and Vera sobbed and pressed her hands to her mouth. Delphine paled and sank back into her chair, but her gaze remained stubborn. "Don't say that," she whispered. "That's awful." "Awful? What are you doing right now? Giving me an ultimatum, either the house or my grandchildren. Do you think I don't understand what that means? I just want them to have a future. I don't want them to be left with nothing." "Whose future? Theirs or yours?" I turned away from the window and looked at my daughter. "You want them to sell the house and give you the money, or you want to control it yourself until they grow up." "That's not true!" Delphine jumped up from her chair but staggered again. "I'm their mother. I have a right to think about their well-being." "You have a right to raise them, not trade them." "I'm not trading them. I'm offering a reasonable solution to the problem." "What problem? I don't have a problem." "You do. You just don't see them. Or you don't want to see them." "Mom, please." Quincy stood up and took a step toward us. "Let's calm down and talk this out." "No," I said firmly. "Let your mother finish." "What will happen if I refuse?" Delphine was silent, staring at me with eyes red from wine. Norris sat on the sofa, frozen, not daring to intervene. Vera cried quietly, wiping her tears with the sleeve of her sweater. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked particularly loudly in the ensuing silence. "If you refuse," Delphine finally said, her voice cold and determined, "it means you don't care about your grandchildren. And then there's no point in us coming here." "Mom!" Quincy and Vera exclaimed simultaneously, but she continued to look only at me. "You won't see them," she added even more quietly. "Never." I nodded slowly, feeling something break inside me. 45 years ago, I held newborn Delphine in my arms and thought there was nothing more beautiful than motherhood. Now this woman was threatening to take my grandchildren away from me because of real estate. I understand. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. The cold evening air rushed into the house, bringing with it the smell of fallen leaves and the approaching winter. Then leave. Right now. "Mom," Delphine began, but I shook my head. "Leave. All of you. Now." Norris got up first and pulled his wife by the arm. She resisted, trying to say something, but he insisted, leading her to the door. In the hallway, they pulled on their coats. Delphine whispered something to her husband, but he just shook his head. Quincy and Vera slowly followed their parents, turning back to me with pleading eyes. "Grandma," Vera whispered at the door, "I didn't want to. We didn't know." "I know, dear. It's not your fault." When the door closed, I leaned against it and closed my eyes. The house became very quiet. Only the ticking of the clock and the sound of cars outside reminded me that life was going on. Delphina's half-empty glass of wine was on the coffee table, and I thought that tomorrow I would definitely pour it out. For the first 3 days after they left, I hardly left the house. I got up at 7 in the morning as usual, made tea, and sat down at the kitchen window with a cup in my hands. Through the window, I could see a small courtyard with an old maple tree planted by Frank, and beyond that, the backyard of the McDonald's. Esther hung her laundry every morning at 7:30, regardless of the weather, and I couldn't help watching this unchanging ritual. I liked watching my neighbor. At 73, she was more agile than many 50-year-olds, quickly hanging sheets and towels, checking the clothespins and adjusting the lines. 40 years as an elementary school teacher had instilled in her a habit of order and precision, qualities that I understood and appreciated well. The house seemed too quiet without the voices of children. I hadn't realized before how accustomed I had become to these monthly visits, to the hustle and bustle that Delphina's family brought with them. Now, with only the ticking of the clock and the noise of cars outside the window, the silence weighed heavily on me. The phone rang for the first time on Tuesday, around 11 in the morning. I was sorting through old documents in my desk, an archivist's habit of periodically tidying up papers, throwing away outdated references, and sorting bills by year. My daughter's name flashed on the screen, and I dismissed the call without hesitation. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. Then again 10 minutes later. The fourth time, I just turned off the sound and put the phone in a desk drawer next to old certificates and documents. By midday, Delphine switched to text messages. The first one came in the morning. "Mom, we need to talk. I was wrong on Sunday. I'm sorry." Then another, "You're not answering your calls. I'm worried about you." And closer to evening, "The kids are asking about you. Let's meet and talk about everything calmly, like adults." I read the messages but didn't reply. Each one sounded insincere, calculated. Delphine wasn't apologizing because she realized she was wrong, but because she realized that things weren't going to work out. She needed to change tactics, find a different approach to solving her problem. On Thursday morning, I decided it was time to get back to my normal life. I couldn't stay locked up because of a family conflict. I got dressed, grabbed my bag, and headed to the grocery store on the corner of Maplewood Street. I walked slowly, looking at the houses I knew by heart. The Chan's house with its neat little garden where the last autumn asters were blooming. The house of the young Grayson couple with a playground in the yard, a swing set, a slide, and a sandbox covered with fallen leaves. Old Mr. Coleman's house, who never mowed his lawn or raked his leaves. Janice, a plump woman in her 50s who had worked there for over 10 years, was sitting at the cash register in the store. We always exchanged a few words about the weather or prices, but nothing more. Janice was one of those people who knew how to keep a light conversation going without intruding on anyone's personal life. "How are you, Mrs. Pemberton?" she asked, ringing up my groceries. "I haven't seen you in a while." "Fine, just staying home, reading." "I see. I don't go anywhere for weeks sometimes either, especially when it rains every day like last week. What are you reading?" "Detective novels, mostly. Old, tried-and-true ones." "Oh, I see. At least you know who's good and who's bad." I nodded and took the bag of groceries. This simple conversation about nothing suddenly seemed more pleasant to me than any family dinner in recent months. On the way home, I ran into Esther McDonald. She was walking from the mailbox with a handful of letters in her hands and stopped when she saw me. "Miriam, I'm so glad I ran into you. I was starting to worry you were sick. I haven't seen you for several days." "Everything's fine, Esther. I'm just a little tired." Esther looked at me intently with her sharp brown eyes. She was 73, 3 years older than me, but she looked younger. Perhaps because she had worked as a primary school teacher all her life and was used to caring for others. "How's your daughter? I haven't seen her around lately. I usually see your car on Sundays, but not this time." "She's busy," I replied curtly. "I see." Esther paused, sorting through her letters. "You know, yesterday I saw a woman walking around your house, tall, wearing a black coat. She stood at the door for a long time, then looked in the windows. I thought maybe she was a relative of yours, so Delphine had come by. I hadn't noticed. I was in the basement sorting through Frank's old things." "If you need anything, let me know," Esther added. "We're neighbors. We should help each other." "Thanks." At home, I put the groceries away and sat down at the table with a cup of tea. My phone was lying nearby, screen down. I knew there were several more messages from Delphine, but I didn't want to read them. Instead, I took an old photo album out of the desk drawer. The photos were neatly pasted in with captions indicating when, where, and who was pictured, an archivist's habit. Here was our wedding with Frank, me in a simple white dress, him in a dark suit, both serious and a little confused. Here was Delphine's birth, a tiny red bundle in a hospital blanket. Here were her first steps, her first day at school, her graduation. In one photo, Delphine is about 8 years old, standing in our yard with a shovel in her hands. Frank was teaching her how to plant tulips. I remember how focused she was, digging holes so carefully and placing the bulbs neatly. And in the spring, she ran out every day to check if the sprouts had come up. When did that change? When did she stop being that girl who could spend an hour digging in the dirt for a few flowers? Or maybe I just didn't notice how my child was changing. On Friday morning, something unexpected happened. The doorbell rang and I thought, could Delphine have decided to come? But standing on the doorstep was a young man in a delivery uniform with a large bouquet of roses. Miriam Pemberton? Yes, a delivery for you. I took the bouquet and closed the door. Attached to the flowers was a card. I'm sorry, Mom. I love you. Delphine. The roses were beautiful, expensive, red and white, at least $50 for the bouquet. But they didn't smell like flowers. They smelled like money. I put them in a vase, but they didn't bring any joy. An hour later, a box of chocolates arrived in a golden box with a velvet ribbon, Swiss, judging by the label. Then a basket of exotic fruits, mangoes, papayas, and something else tropical and expensive. Couriers came and went, and each time I opened the door, hoping to see someone else. By evening, the house resembled a flower shop. I sat amid this splendor and thought about how Delphine had failed to understand the main thing, that it wasn't about a quarrel that could be smoothed over with gifts. The point was that she was ready to sell me for real estate. On Saturday morning, the bouquets were replaced by attempts to visit in person. First, Delphine herself came. She stood at the door and rang the bell, then knocked with her fist. I sat in my chair reading, ignoring the noise. "Mom, I know you're home," she shouted. "The car is there, the lights are on. We need to talk like adults." Esther McDonald came out of her house and said something to Delphine. I couldn't hear the words, but the tone was stern, schoolmarmish. Delphine replied sharply, and Esther shook her head disapprovingly. A few minutes later, my daughter left, slamming the car door loudly. Later, Esther knocked on my door. "Miriam, what's going on?" "Your daughter is behaving inappropriately." "Family problems," I replied. "If you need help—" Esther paused. "I have the number of a good lawyer, just in case." I looked at her in surprise. "A lawyer?" "Well, you never know, sometimes relatives." She didn't finish, but I understood. Esther had been a teacher for 40 years and had seen all kinds of families. Just keep it in mind. That evening, Delphine returned with Norris. They stood at the door for a long time, talking quietly. Then Norris went to the living room window and knocked on the glass. "Miriam," he said rather loudly, "I'm very sorry about what happened on Sunday. Delphine is sorry. We all are." I put down my book and went to the window. Norris looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. Delphine stood a little way off with a sour expression and her arms crossed. "Can we come in?" he asked. I shook my head and walked away from the window. No one had come on Sunday, but there was an unstamped envelope in the mailbox, which meant it had been delivered by hand. Inside was a letter from Delphine, handwritten on 2 sheets of pink paper. "Mom, I don't understand why you're doing this. Yes, maybe I didn't express myself well that evening, but is offering to secure the future of your grandchildren a crime? You always said that family is the most important thing. So why are you turning your back on us now? The children ask where their grandmother is, and I don't know what to tell them. You're punishing them for my words, and that's not fair. Think about them, not your own hurt feelings." I finished reading the letter and carefully tore it into small pieces. Delphine never understood what was going on. For her, it all boiled down to poor choice of words and a family misunderstanding. 2 weeks passed in relative silence. Delphine didn't send any more gifts or write any more letters. Apparently, she had decided to give me time to think things over, as she liked to say when she was a child. On Wednesday, exactly 3 weeks after our argument, there was a knock at the door. It was around 4 in the afternoon, and I was preparing a simple dinner for myself, soup from a packet and a sandwich. Through the peephole, I saw Quincy and Vera. They were standing on the porch with backpacks on their shoulders, clearly coming straight from school. Quincy shifted nervously from foot to foot, and Vera bit her lip, a sure sign that she was nervous. I opened the door, and they froze, as if they didn't expect to be let in. "Hi, Grandma," Quincy said quietly. "Hi. Come in." They took off their shoes in the hallway and went into the living room. Vera looked around as if checking to see if anything had changed in the last few weeks. She noticed the wilted flowers from Delphine. "Beautiful roses," she said. "Your mom sent them." "Would you like some tea?" I asked. "Yes, please," Vera replied. While I put the kettle on, they sat in silence. All that could be heard was the ticking of the clock and the noise of cars outside the window. When I returned with the tray, Quincy finally spoke. "Grandma, we wanted to apologize for what happened. About Mom." "You have nothing to apologize for. You had nothing to do with it." "But Mom said it was because of us," Vera said, taking the cup with trembling hands, "that you don't want to see us because we were ungrateful when you offered to sign the house over to us." "What exactly did she tell you?" They exchanged glances, and I realized they had agreed who would speak. "She said you offered to sign the house over to us, and we seemed ungrateful," Vera began, "and now you're hurt and don't want to see us." "And she also said that old people are often touchy," added Quincy, blushing. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you." "And you believed that?" "Not entirely," admitted Vera. "You were never touchy, and it was strange anyway." "What exactly was strange?" "Well, you always said that a house is a family's history, that you can't just give away something that has been accumulated over the years, and then suddenly you decided to transfer it to us." Quincy nodded, and Mom started talking about how we should be ready for responsibility, that when the house is ours, we'll be able to make important decisions. That sounded suspicious too. "What decisions?" "Like selling it and buying something better," said Vera. "Mom said the house was too old and that we could use the money to pay for our education." "Whose education?" "Ours. But that was strange too, because we already go to a good school." "We used to," Vera corrected grimly. "Now Mom says private school is too expensive and we'll have to go to public school." I felt a chill run down my spine. When did she say that? "Last week. She said we need to save money because Dad's having problems at work." "Does your dad really have problems?" Quincy shrugged. "I don't know, he's the same as always. He comes home tired, eats dinner, and watches TV. But Mom started talking more about money and how we were living beyond our means. She also found ads for houses in another neighborhood," Quincy said. "In Roland Park. The houses there are bigger and more expensive." Roland Park was a prestigious neighborhood in Baltimore where doctors, lawyers, and successful business people lived. "Did she show you the ads?" "Not us, Dad. But I saw them by accident when I went into the kitchen to get some water." They were sitting at the table with the printouts, and Mom was saying something about it being a good investment for the family's future. "And what did Dad say?" "That they didn't have that kind of money. Mom said they would if they did everything right." Vera put her cup on the saucer and looked at me seriously. "Grandma, is it true that you wanted to give us the house?" "No," I replied honestly. "Your mom demanded that I sign the house over to you. She gave me an ultimatum, either the house or she wouldn't let me see you anymore." Quincy turned pale. "She said that?" "Exactly." "But that's blackmail," whispered Vera. "Exactly." They sat silently, digesting what they had heard. Then Quincy suddenly asked, "Grandma, do you know what Mom said about you to Dad?" "What exactly?" "That you're getting old and senile, that soon you won't be able to take care of yourself, and we'll have to sell the house anyway to pay for a nursing home." I felt something tighten in my chest. "When did she say that?" "Last night. They thought we were asleep, but I went downstairs to get some water and overheard them talking. Mom said it would be better to settle the matter now while you're still able to sign the papers voluntarily. And if I don't sign, then they'll wait until you," he faltered, "until I die." Or until they prove you're incapable of making decisions for yourself, Vera added quietly. Mom said there are procedures for elderly people. She's going to have me declared incompetent? I don't know, whispered Quincy. But she said something about doctors who can confirm it. And also, Quincy swallowed, Mom said that if everything works out, the house could be sold in a few months, and that there are already buyers. Buyers? Some construction company. They want to tear down the house and build townhouses on the site. The world around me seemed to tilt. Delphine didn't just want to get my house. She was already planning to destroy it. The house where she had spent her childhood, where her father had died, where photos of 3 generations of our family were kept. "Grandma?" Vera called softly. "Are you okay?" I looked at her and tried to smile, but it came out unconvincing. My hands were shaking slightly, and I hid them under the table. "Yes, dear, I'm just thinking." "About what?" "About how sometimes children know more about their parents than their parents know about their children." Quincy leaned forward, and I noticed how he was trying to look older than his 16 years. "We don't want you to be taken to a nursing home, and we don't want this house torn down. What do you want?" "We want everything to be like it was before," Vera whispered, her voice tinged with despair. "It won't be like it was before," I said gently, "but that doesn't mean the future has to be bad." "What are you going to do?" Quincy asked. I looked at them, at these 2 teenagers who had risked coming to me to tell me the truth, who could have just kept quiet and gone on with their lives without getting involved in adult problems. But they had chosen honesty, like their grandfather. "I'll defend myself," I replied firmly. My grandchildren left around 7 in the evening when it was completely dark. I walked them to the door and stood at the window for a long time, watching them walk down the street under the streetlights. Quincy walked a little ahead, turning back to look at his sister from time to time, while Vera stopped several times and looked at my house, as if memorizing it. When they disappeared around the corner, I closed the curtains and sat down in my chair. Thoughts swirled in my head, but one was clearer than the rest. I would not let Delphine win this game. In 38 years of working in the archives, I had learned to understand documents and how the bureaucratic machine worked. I had advantages Delphine didn't know about. I spent most of the night thinking about a plan of action. By morning, my decision was final. The next day, I couldn't wait until 9 o'clock, so I called Esther McDonald. "Esther, remember you mentioned a lawyer? If he's still available, give me his number." "Of course, Miriam. His name is Walter Bradshaw. He's a good man, honest. He helped my niece when her ex-husband tried to take her house away after their divorce." "What happened? Is there anything I can do to help?" "Family problems. I'll manage on my own for now, but thank you." "I understand. You know, I worked with children and their parents for 40 years. I've seen it all. Sometimes grown-up children forget that their parents are people too, with rights of their own." I wrote down the number and called Bradshaw's office that same day. The secretary, a woman with a pleasant voice, said the earliest appointment was a week away, but I asked for an urgent meeting. "This concerns an attempt by relatives to contest my legal capacity," I explained. "Time may be short." "I see. Hold on a minute. I'll check with Mr. Bradshaw." A few seconds later, she returned. "Mr. Bradshaw can see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. But the meeting will take at least an hour. There are many details to discuss." "That's fine with me." I spent the rest of the day preparing. I gathered all the important documents: birth certificate, passport, house documents, bank statements, medical records. I put them in an old folder that I had once used for work papers. It was an archivist's habit. Everything had to be organized and easily accessible. In the evening, while sorting through the documents, I came across Frank's and my marriage certificate. The paper was yellowed, but the stamps were clear and the signatures legible. 42 years ago, we stood in City Hall and pledged our fidelity to each other. Back then, it seemed like an eternity ahead of us. As it turned out, it was only 37 years, but they were good years. His office was in downtown Baltimore, in an old brick building not far from City Hall where I worked. It was one of those buildings built in the 1920s. High ceilings, massive doors, marble floors in the lobby. Seriousness and reliability were written on every stone. I took the bus, even though I could have driven. but my intuition told me it was better not to attract attention. Delphine could be following me or asking my neighbors questions. Walter Bradshaw turned out to be a man in his 60s, with gray hair and attentive brown eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. His office was furnished in a simple style: dark wood, leather chairs, bookshelves reaching to the ceiling. Diplomas and certificates hung on the walls, along with several photographs, presumably of his family. "Please have a seat," he said, pointing to a chair across from his desk. "Esther MacDonald spoke very highly of you. She said you were a sensible and decent man. Esther is a good neighbor and a good person. Tell me what's troubling you." I explained the whole situation in detail, from Delphine's ultimatum to the talk of having me declared incompetent. Bradshaw listened silently, occasionally asking clarifying questions and making notes in his notebook. "How long have you not been in contact with your daughter?" he asked. 3 weeks. "And how often did you see each other before that?" "Once a month, family dinners on Sundays." "And there were no signs of this behavior before?" "She's always been practical, but not to this extent." "I see," he said when I finished. "Your daughter is acting quite typically for such cases. First emotional pressure, then threats, and if that doesn't work, an attempt to have her declared legally incompetent through the courts. Unfortunately, this is not uncommon. Can she do that?" "She can try. But to have someone declared legally incompetent, you need serious grounds: mental illness, dementia, an inability to understand the consequences of their actions. Judging by our conversation, you seem to be fine. You assess the situation adequately, think logically, and remember details. What if she finds a doctor who says the opposite? Then an independent examination will be ordered. The court does not rely on the opinion of a single specialist, especially if there are reasons to doubt their objectivity. And there will be grounds. After all, the doctor was brought in by an interested party." Bradshaw leaned forward and took off his glasses, wiping them with a napkin. "But it's better not to go to court. Court cases are stressful, time-consuming, and expensive. And even if you win, family relationships will be ruined. They're already ruined." "Perhaps. But what do you want to do with your property? If the goal is to ensure a fair inheritance, there are ways to guarantee that." "I want to leave the house to my grandchildren, but not in a way that their parents can take advantage of or force the children to sell." "I see. There are several options. You could set up a trust with the condition that the beneficiaries will only gain full control of the property after reaching a certain age. Let's say 21 or even 25. Is that complicated?" "Not really, but it will take time to draw up the documents and get approval from the tax authorities. A trust is a serious legal instrument. How long will it take?" 2 weeks if we hurry. Maybe a little longer if there are any questions from the tax office. I thought about what my grandchildren had told me. Delphine had already spoken to a lawyer, looked for doctors, and planned to sell the house. I didn't have much time. Is there any way to do it faster? We can draw up a new will right now. A will takes effect after death, and it will be difficult to change it, especially if there are witnesses who can confirm that you were of sound mind at the time of signing. What kind of witnesses? For example, I can provide a statement about your mental state based on our conversation. Even better would be to get an opinion from an independent psychiatrist. This will be a strong argument in case of attempts to contest the will. Is this necessary? Not necessary, but highly desirable. If your daughter does try to contest the will in court, such documents will make her task much more difficult. The court will see that you took steps in advance to confirm your legal capacity. We talked for another half hour discussing the details. Bradshaw explained various options for wording the will, talked about tax issues and how to minimize the risk of a challenge. He spoke clearly and understandably, without unnecessary legal jargon, and I felt I could trust him. "There's one more question," I said before leaving. "Can I restrict my daughter's access to the house now?" "How exactly?" "Prohibit her from coming here while I'm alive. Get a court order or something like that. It's your house. You have the right to refuse entry to anyone. But if she tries to get custody, the court may find such behavior suspicious. They may decide that you are paranoid about your family. So it's better not to interfere. It's better to behave reasonably and predictably. Don't give them any reason to doubt your sanity. See your daughter if she comes, but don't sign any papers." And keep a diary of all your meetings, what was said, who was present. It may come in handy. He gave me the number of a psychiatrist, Dr. Hanning, who specialized in working with older people and was often called in by the courts as an independent expert. Tell her I sent you. She'll understand what's going on and schedule a full evaluation. I returned home with a clear plan of action and a sense of relief. For the first time in 3 weeks, I felt like I was in control. The next day, I called Dr. Hanning. Her secretary said the earliest appointment was a week away. But when I mentioned Bradshaw and explained the situation, they scheduled an appointment for Thursday. Dr. Hanning asked me to tell you that the examination will take about 2 hours, said the secretary. And it would be best if you brought all your medical records from the last 5 years. I spent Wednesday gathering my medical records. Fortunately, I had kept all my documents neatly organized, test results, doctor's reports, prescriptions. I even had a note confirming that I had undergone a medical examination 5 years ago, and no serious problems had been found. Dr. Hanning's office was located in a modern medical center on the outskirts of the city. The doctor herself was a middle-aged woman with a pleasant voice and a professional but friendly manner. Her gray hair was neatly styled, she wore minimal makeup and a conservative suit. "Mr. Bradshaw told me about your situation," she said, looking through my documents. "I understand that this is a stressful situation. But don't worry, we'll conduct a standard examination to determine your actual condition." The examination did indeed take 2 hours. Dr. Hanning asked detailed questions about my life, my work, family, health, and plans for the future. She tested my memory, asking me to name the birth dates of my relatives, the addresses where I had lived, and important events. She tested my attention span by giving me concentration tasks and asking me to repeat sequences of numbers and words. She asked me in particular detail about my relationship with Delphine. "Tell me how your relationship with your daughter has changed in recent years." She has become more practical. She always finds something in my house that needs to be changed or improved. Wasn't it like that before? To a lesser extent. She used to be more interested in my affairs, how I was feeling, what I was reading, how I was spending my time. In recent years, it's been only practical matters. How do you explain that? Probably because she cares about my well-being, or she thinks she does. At the end, the doctor asked me to solve a few math problems. Nothing difficult, just school level, but requiring concentration. Then she gave me a piece of paper and asked me to draw a clock showing a specific time. "Excellent," she said, studying my drawing. "All the proportions are correct, the numbers are in place, and the hands are showing the right time. Is that important?" "Very. It's one of the basic tests for cognitive impairment. People with dementia or other problems usually can't draw a clock correctly." At the end of the examination, the doctor leaned back in her chair and looked at me with a smile. "The results are excellent, Mrs. Pemberton. No signs of cognitive impairment. Your memory, attention, and logical thinking are all within the normal range for your age. In fact, your scores are above average. Apparently, your intellectual work and habit of systematization are paying off. And can this be used in court?" "Of course. The report will be ready tomorrow by lunchtime. I will also include the results of psychological tests and my assessment of your emotional state." "And what is my assessment?" "You respond appropriately to stressful situations, take reasonable measures to protect your interests, and are capable of long-term planning. In short, you behave like a sensible adult." On Friday, I returned to Bradshaw with the medical report in my hands. He studied the document carefully, nodding from time to time. "Excellent work," he said finally. "Dr. Hanning has written a very detailed and convincing report. With documents like these, it will be extremely difficult for your daughter to prove anything in court. We spent over an hour drafting a new will." Bradshaw carefully considered each wording, explaining the legal subtleties to me. "You are leaving the house and all your property to Quincy and Vera in equal shares," he dictated to his secretary. "But on one condition. They will only gain full control of the inheritance when they reach the age of 21. Until then, the property will be managed by an independent trustee. Who would you like to appoint as trustee?" he asked me. I thought about it. I had no relatives who could be entrusted with such responsibility. I also had few friends, and they were all about my age. Can I appoint a law firm? Yes, you can, but it will cost money, a percentage of the value of the property, usually between 2 and 5% per year. How much is that in monetary terms? With a house worth $300,000, it's between $6,000 and $15,000 a year. But that guarantees professional management and protection from pressure from relatives. That's fine. We appointed Bradshaw as our trustee and added a few more important conditions to the will. If any of the heirs try to sell the house before they reach the age of 30, Bradshaw explained, their share will pass to another heir. This will protect the property from hasty decisions made under pressure from parents. What if they both want to sell? Then they can do so, but only after they turn 30 and only by unanimous decision. By that age, people are usually wise enough to make informed decisions. We also included a clause stating that if one of the grandchildren dies without leaving any heirs, their share will pass to another grandchild, not to their parents. That way, Bradshaw explained, even in the worst-case scenario, the house will remain in the grandchildren's family and not revert to the parents. We signed the will in the presence of 2 witnesses, Bradshaw's secretary and a notary who was called in especially for the occasion. The procedure took almost half an hour. Each document had to be read aloud, its meaning explained, and confirmation obtained that I understood the content and was signing voluntarily. This is standard procedure for wills that may be contested, Bradshaw explained. The more formalities are observed, the more difficult it is to find grounds for contesting it. The original will remain with the lawyer in a safe, and I was given 3 certified copies. Hide 1 copy at home in a safe place, he advised. The second can be kept in a bank. The third is a spare. At home, I hid 1 copy of the will in a safe in the bedroom behind a bookcase. Frank had bought it many years ago to store important documents, and Delphine didn't know about it. I did take the second copy to the bank and put it in a safe deposit box. On Saturday morning, Esther called. "Miriam, is everything okay? I saw you leaving on the bus several times." And some people came. A man in a suit, then a woman in a white coat. "Everything's fine. I was taking care of some things, legal and medical." "I see." Esther paused. "Just know that if anything happens, I'm always here to help. You can count on me, and if I see anything suspicious near your house, I'll be sure to let you know." "Thank you. That means a lot. We've been neighbors for 20 years. That means something." On Sunday afternoon, the grandchildren came over again. This time, they looked even more worried than last time. "Grandma," Vera said as soon as she crossed the threshold, "Mom is up to something." "What exactly?" "Some doctor came to see us yesterday," Quincy replied. "Mom talked to him for a long time in the kitchen. Then they came up to our rooms and started asking questions about you." "What kind of doctor?" "Young, about 35. He introduced himself as Dr. Mitchell. Mom said he's our family doctor, but I've never seen him before. We have a different family doctor." "What did he ask?" "If we'd noticed anything unusual about your behavior in the last few months. Forgetfulness, aggression, inappropriate reactions. If you say strange things or repeat yourself." "And what did you say?" "That you're perfectly normal," Vera said firmly. "That we haven't noticed anything strange. That you're the same as always. Neat. Smart. Fair." "Mom was very unhappy with our answers," added Quincy. "After the doctor left, she gave us a real dressing down. She said we were too young to understand the signs of senile dementia and that we shouldn't defend you out of a false sense of loyalty. And she also said that we were harming your own interests," Vera added. "That if we didn't recognize the problem in time, it would only get worse." I sat down in a chair, feeling exhausted. The tension of the last few weeks was taking its toll, but I couldn't give up. "Is there anything else?" "Yes. Mom made an appointment for you to see this doctor," said Quincy. "She said that if you don't go voluntarily, the doctor will come to your house. She said he has the right to a compulsory examination." "When is the appointment?" "Wednesday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, at his office on Charles Street." I knew that street. It had a lot of private medical offices, not all of which had the best reputation. "Kids, I want to tell you something," I began, choosing my words carefully. "I've made a new will. After I die, you will inherit the house, but you will not have full control over the inheritance until you come of age. Until then, it will be managed by an independent organization." They looked at each other. "Does Mom know about this?" asked Quincy. "Not yet, and she shouldn't." "What if she still declares you incompetent?" "She won't. I have a certificate from an independent psychiatrist stating that I am completely mentally healthy. I underwent a full examination 3 days ago. Vera came up to me and hugged me. 'Grandma, I'm scared.' 'What are you afraid of?' 'That Mom will find out that we've been visiting you and that she'll do something bad to you, or to us.' I stroked her hair. 'She won't do anything bad. She can't. We have laws. We have courts. We have justice. But she's trying to take your house away from you by any means necessary. She's trying, but she won't succeed. I won't give up without a fight.' On Wednesday, I didn't go to the doctor Delphine had chosen. Instead, I stayed home and read a detective novel, good old Agatha Christie, where all crimes are solved and justice prevails. At 2:00 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Delphine accompanied by an unfamiliar man in a white coat. Apparently, it was Dr. Mitchell. "Mom, open up!" my daughter shouted, pressing the doorbell. "We know you're home." "The car is in the yard. The lights are on." I sat in my chair and didn't move. "Mrs. Pemberton," a man's voice said, "I'm Dr. Mitchell. I need to perform a mandatory medical examination. It will only take a few minutes." I remained silent. "Mom, you're putting us in an awkward position," Delphine continued to shout. "The doctor came especially. At least talk to him." They stood at the door for 15 minutes, ringing and knocking periodically. Then they left, but I heard Delphine talking to someone on the phone as she stood by the car. In the evening, she sent me a long message. "Mom, you missed an important medical appointment. Dr. Mitchell says that refusing to be examined is itself an alarming symptom. We're coming back tomorrow, and I'm asking you to be reasonable." I turned off my phone and put it in my desk drawer. The next day, they did come, and the day after that, too. Each time, Delphine yelled at the door, demanding that they be let in, while the doctor wrote something down in a notebook, presumably recording my refusal to cooperate. On Thursday, they were joined by another person, an elderly man in a gray suit who introduced himself to the neighbors as a social worker. "Esther told me about it that evening. They asked me about your behavior," she said, coming in for tea. "If I noticed anything strange, if you scream at night, if you wear inappropriate clothes." "And what did you say?" "That you're the most normal and well-adjusted woman I know, that your house is always tidy, you're always well-dressed, and you never cause any trouble for your neighbors." "Thank you." I also told them that I've known you for 20 years and have never seen any signs of mental illness, and that if anyone in our family is acting strangely, it's your daughter, who is causing a scene at someone else's house. On Friday morning, Bradshaw called. "Miriam, I have news. Your daughter contacted us. She asked if you had made a new will and demanded copies of all the documents." "And what did you say?" "That I couldn't disclose client information without their written consent, but she was very insistent. She threatened to take you to court. Is that possible?" "Theoretically, yes. If she files a petition to have you declared incompetent, the court may require you to provide all documents related to your property. But to do that, she needs compelling reasons, and she doesn't have any yet. What should I do? Continue living your life as usual. Don't give anyone any reason to doubt your sanity, and keep a diary of all your contacts with your daughter. Write down the dates, times, and what was said. It could be useful in court. By the way, I have some good news for you," he added. "I checked out this Dr. Mitchell your daughter brought in. He has a rather questionable reputation. His conclusions have been challenged in court several times for bias and insufficient grounds. The last time, he even received a warning from the medical commission." That was really good news. Delphine didn't show up over the weekend, but on Monday morning, I saw an unfamiliar car slowly driving past my house. A woman wearing dark glasses was sitting behind the wheel looking closely at my house, perhaps a private detective hired by Delphine. On Tuesday, a man with a tablet approached the house and wrote something down while looking at the windows and doors. Just in case, I took a photo of him through a crack in the curtains. On Wednesday, Esther said that some other people had come to her, introducing themselves as social workers. They asked if you needed any help, if you looked exhausted or sick, she said. They also asked if any strange people had been coming to your house and if I heard any suspicious noises coming from your house. And what did you say? That you look fine, you're eating well, and the only strange people I see around your house are them. On Thursday evening, the doorbell rang. This time, only Norris came, without his wife and children. He looked exhausted, his clothes were rumpled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. "Miriam, can we talk?" he asked through the door. "Please, I'm alone without Delphine." I thought about it and opened the door. "Thank you," he said, entering the hallway. "I realize I have no right to bother you after everything that's happened. Come into the living room." We sat down across from each other, and I could see that Norris was struggling to find the right words. "Miriam, I came to apologize and to warn you." "Warn me about what?" "Delphine is going to file a petition to have you declared incompetent tomorrow morning. She's found a lawyer who specializes in these cases. And what do you think about that?" "I think it's crazy. You're a perfectly normal person, and any sane court will see that." "But you didn't stop your wife." "I tried." Norris ran his hand over his face. "All we've done for the last few weeks is fight. I told her it was wrong, unfair, that she was destroying our family, but she wouldn't listen." "What about the children?" "The children are on your side. Quincy even said that if his mother takes this to court, he'll testify on your behalf." Delphine flew into a rage. "What will happen next?" "I don't know." Norris stood up and walked over to the window. "Delphine says that if I don't support her in court, she'll file for divorce and take the children. Are you prepared to do that? Support her?" "No." He turned to me. "I won't lie on the stand against you, even if it costs me my marriage." "Thank you, Norris. That means a lot. I'm ashamed of what's happening, ashamed of my wife, ashamed of myself for not being able to stop her." After he left, I called Bradshaw and told him about Norris's visit. "So she's made up her mind," he said. "That's okay. We're ready. We have the psychiatrist's report, we have witnesses to your sanity, we have a properly drafted will, and most importantly, we have the truth on our side. What do I need to do?" "Nothing special. Just go on with your life as usual. When the court summons arrives, and it will arrive in a few days, we'll start preparing for the trial." On Sunday, the grandchildren came for the last time. Quincy looked grim and determined, and Vera looked frightened and confused. "Mom said she won't let us come see you anymore," Quincy said as soon as he entered the house. "She says it's dangerous for our mental health, and she somehow found out about your visits to the lawyer," Vera added. "I don't know how, but she knows you've made a new will." I wasn't surprised. Delphine had always been persistent when she wanted something. Maybe she had been watching me or asking someone. What is she planning to do now? "She's going to file a lawsuit tomorrow," replied Quincy. "She says the new will is the best proof of your incompetence. She says normal people don't change their wills without serious reasons. What does Dad say?" "He's tired of it all," replied Quincy. "They had a big fight yesterday. Dad yelled that he wouldn't participate in this mess, and Mom said she'd divorce him and leave him penniless. And what did Dad say? That he didn't care. That a clear conscience isn't worth a penny. What are you going to do? If it goes to court, we'll testify in your favor," Quincy said firmly. "Mom may not let us see you, but she can't make us lie in court." "I don't care what happens to us after that," added Vera. "The truth is more important." I hugged my grandchildren goodbye, not knowing when I would see them again. But I was sure that sooner or later we would meet again. After my death, they would inherit the house, and when they turned 21, they would gain full control of the inheritance and be able to make their own decisions. Until then, they would have to learn to live without their grandmother and cope with difficulties on their own. Perhaps it would be good for them. It would teach them not to take other people's decisions at face value and to fight for what they believed was right. In the evening, I sat in my chair by the window and looked out at the quiet street. The lights came on in the house across the street. The Grayson family was having dinner, their children were doing their homework, a normal family life, as it should be. The house became even quieter than before, but that didn't scare me. I had lived here for half a century, and these walls held not only my memories, but also my will. Delphine may win a few battles, but she has already lost the war. And my grandchildren will one day understand the difference between love and coercion, between care and self-interest. In the meantime, I will live my life, read books, talk to my neighbor Esther, water the flowers on the windowsill. I will remember Frank and our life together. I will wait for my grandchildren to grow up and be able to make their own decisions. Tomorrow is a new day, and maybe I'll get a court summons, but I'm not afraid. I have the truth, I have documents, I have honest people who are willing to testify on my behalf. Most importantly, I am confident that I am doing the right thing. Delphine forgot the most important thing I tried to teach her as a child, that family is built on love and respect, not coercion and self-interest. But my grandchildren have not forgotten, and someday they will understand completely.